Hi, I'm Margaret Martin at Melio Guide, and today I'm going to cover a couple of questions that many of my clients ask me about. And the first one is, what is Dowager's Hump? Because they come to see me and they're really concerned about their posture and their alignment, and they go, is what I have a Dowager's Hump? So, first of all, it's not a term that was often used when I went through physical therapy school. So I looked it up, and it so happens that a dowager is somebody like Lady Granton in Downton Abbey, who was widowed from an earl, or somebody who's widowed from a prince. So it's a very old English term given to, at the time, wealthy older women who, I guess, the hump part is, as they age, their spine would age, and so their posture deteriorated, and the hump that would develop on the back of their upper thoracic spine in here became known as a dowager's hump. It's not necessarily associated with osteoporosis, and it's not necessarily associated with spinal fusion or anything terrible, but it is today something that many people worry about, from as young as 15 years old to as old as 105 years old or older, because people are concerned about their posture, and rightfully so. So really, when you are worried about dowager's hump, you really should be mostly just concerned about what is your posture and what are you doing to correct your posture or optimize your posture. And that's what we're going to cover today. So that leads us into, what are the causes of dowager's hump? Well, unlike the times of Downton Abbey, where it was, just aging and fatigue and sometimes osteoporosis or poor posture, today it's devices, and it's our computers, and it's our soft chairs, and it's our laissez-faire attitude in schools and at dinner tables. And so no longer are children being encouraged to sit up tall repeatedly. It's not considered an important part of a young woman or young man's demeanor when, part of a social circle. It's quite common today that you'll see people hanging out, and young people, and everybody's just sitting slouched, and that's just part of the way of being. Now that becomes really challenging for you as a listener, and for us as therapists, when you want to change your posture and optimize your posture, because all of a sudden the causes, which is just habitual slouching, become something that you need to habitually unlearn. And so that's, I would say, 80% of the causes of poor posture, or what leads to a dowager's hump. Occasionally, and especially in my population, I will see women who have had multiple fractures of their vertebrae. And when that happens, then the vertebrae themselves become wedged, and in the shape that's no longer more of a flat edge on each end, but rather the front of the vertebrae takes on that wedge shape. And then that does also encourage the spine, because one bone being stacked on top of the other is encouraged to take on that deformity or that shape. There are a few other medical conditions that are associated, but with the dowager's hump, or that kyphotic posture. And also what's often seen, what people tend to worry about, or the cause, is this big fatty pad that sometimes people will get here. Well, the body is very intelligent, and if you have to hold up an 11-pound head all day long, then the body's going to try to create more strength in this area by laying down more tissues. And so you get this big fatty pad sometimes, and it's your body's way of trying to deal with the forward head posture. So those are the main causes. So environmental, our chairs, or how we sit in our cars, how we hang out all day, how we sit at our computers, how we're on our phone. So those are the main causes of faulty posture that will lead to the fear of Dowager's hump. So we don't often think of the symptoms that I'm going to cover as this specific symptom of Dowager's hump or poor posture, but rather most people actually notice these things before they even notice their posture, because these are things that they see in the mirror and that they don't like. So one of the things, and one of the reasons I'm dressed like this, is to show you what happens when I alter my posture. And then you'll see some of the symptoms that people are concerned about. So if I'm standing tall, my arms rest by my side. They're not resting in front of me, so they're resting here alongside my body. I have a natural little arch in the small of my back. My mid-back is fairly flat, and I have a small arch in the back of my neck. My ear is lining up over the middle of my shoulder. And so when I do that, my organs have lots of space to do what they love to do. And I can take nice full breaths, open my ribs, and that allows me, if I wanted to suck in my stomach, which I'm doing a little bit right now for the audience, it allows me to engage my deep core muscles appropriately. That also allows me to support my pelvic floor. So when this starts to change and I hang out with my arms in front of me, and as this gets worse, it gets harder for me to be able to hold in my tummy. So now, I'm going to be out here, because for me to naturally hold in all day the way I naturally hold in a little bit in holding an optimum posture, that becomes very tiring. And so what happens is your organs, because the ribs start pushing down, you have a 5-pound liver, you have your stomach, and all your intestines get crushed into this smaller space. And so one of the things people go is, I can't breathe as well. I'm having a little bit of trouble with my digestive system. So those are some symptoms. The other thing is all this pressure down on your pelvic floor makes it harder on your pelvic floor as well. Moving up the line, this forward shoulder posture, any of you who've had shoulder pain, one of the first things the therapist says is, we need to work on your posture. And the reason being is all of my rotator cuff muscles that normally support my posture here and support my shoulders in this optimum position, bring the head of the humerus, or the head of the shoulder bone, back where it sits, like a little golf ball on a golf tee. That's sitting forward. So many shoulder problems, tennis elbow, carpal tunnel, are all caused by this forward posture. Moving up some more, then we have all the neck problems, the jaw problems, the headaches. We have these little muscles, or suboccipital muscles at the base of our skull. When our head is forward, and if every year I get a little bit worse, my head would be further and further forward, because I would want to still be looking at the horizon, and that means all these little muscles get crunched, which would lead to headaches. So there are older studies that I remember looking at, I have to come back out, that they put healthy college-age students in this posture for 15 minutes, and just by changing their posture, they were getting neck pain and headaches. So those are some of the many symptoms that a poor posture and alignment of our beautiful spine can cause. So along the line of symptoms, we talked about the neck and the shoulders. Well, people ask specifically, but are there pain? Do I worry about my posture in terms of causing pain? Well, yes, as mentioned, the shoulder problems can be very painful. You can get tennis elbow, which most of you know is also very painful. Carpal tunnel is very painful. And then the headaches, the neck pain, the jaw pain. So there are many pains that are associated with having poor posture. So how would you know if you need to be worried? about your spine and your posture. So there are some great researchers that look at how do we measure our forward head posture, our kyphosis, and there are some sophisticated ways of doing it with x-rays, but that's not accessible to a lot of people. So fortunately, there was a group of researchers who recently had a very clever idea, and they just lined people up, heels, sacrum, mid-back, and as much as the head as you could to a wall. Now, for purposes of today's video, we're just using the post here on my machine, my pulley system. And so ideally this would be done if you're a clinician watching this, or if you're wanting to do this for yourself. Ideally use just a flat wall. And you're wanting to measure the distance between your C7 and the wall. So how do you figure out where C7 is? So let's find C7. When you want to measure, you're going to take your index finger, place it down your neck, and you're going to come to one bony prominence, a bony bit here that sticks out more than the others. That's usually your first thoracic. So our spine goes from cervical to thoracic, so that's the first thoracic. So we're looking for the last cervical, or C7. So I'm going to take my third finger and place it just above. Now as I bring my head down, and then I'm going to bring my head back up, the bone that I was feeling above, there it is. So this one here, it should kind of disappear underneath my fingers. And so it's not very far apart. So it's on the bony prominence, your index finger, your third finger is just above that. Whether you landmark it with your head forward or back, you are going to want to come back to this forward, and you'll feel it disappear, and that's your C7. So that's what you're going to measure when you come up to the wall. And now I'm going to go up against the wall, or against my wall, and feel the distance between my vertebrae and the post. And so I have roughly a finger width. In this study, what they looked at is a very mild kyphosis was measured at anything under 5 centimeters. Between 5.1 and 8 was considered moderate. That would certainly be an opportune time for people to start, in the beginning. Mild and moderate is when people really want to start focusing on changing their alignment. Because if you wait until it gets severe, and when that distance is more in the range of 8 centimeters or more, then that also was shown to have a higher rate of fractures of the vertebrae. And so both for clinicians this is helpful, but as individuals, sometimes we kind of lose track of what good posture is today, because so many people have bad posture. So this is one way for you to check in on yourself and go, how is my posture doing today, or this month? And using this is helpful, because we used to rely on head to the wall, but for people that have forward head posture, sometimes they would go, oh yeah, I still can get my head to the wall. But it's really, this is what we're looking for. This lengthening or retraction of the neck is what we consider optimum alignment of the head and neck. And we'll cover that more when we get to the exercise section. So what treatments are there for fixing a Dowager's hump, or for fixing your bad posture? Well, I'd like to say that you could do it all by yourself, and for the most part, if you're in the early stages of changes, you certainly can. But I would be doing a disservice to myself as a clinician and all the other wonderful therapists out there if I said you didn't need our help. There's a lot of great techniques that manual therapists that use their hands, can assist you with in helping regain your posture, whether it's myofascial release, whether it's taping, whether it's doing specific mobilization or movements of the vertebrae that have been stiff for a long time. So there's many techniques that are available to the hands of the clinician once they see what your body specifically needs. Having said that, there's still a lot you can do leading up to finding that clinician or while you're working with the clinician. And so I'd like to cover some of those things with you now. So time to talk about sitting posture, which is not the way I'm demonstrating it. So when your knees are higher than your hips, it's very hard to sit up straight because having your knees higher than your hips tilts your pelvis back, flattens your low back. By flattening that nice little arch that once existed in the back, the rest of the back wants to fall forward, and then the head follows. So the very first thing when trying to correct your posture and sitting is to alter the surface that you're sitting on. So one of the first things to look at is where are your knees relative to your hips. If I simply brought the chair up or sat, because I'm short, I often have to sit on the edge of chairs. By doing so, my knees drop down below the height of my hips. That allows me to tilt my pelvis forward. Now, if I wanted to encourage that process a little bit more, I could roll up a little blanket, put it in underneath my sit bones. They also have devices like called a dyna disc or a sit-in disc. They're inflatable discs that are actually covered in cloth or a little bit warmer fabric that you place under your pelvis to tilt your pelvis forward. So all of these things encourage a recreation of or support of the little arch in the small of your back so that all of your vertebrae line up. Then that allows your head to come back over your shoulder. So getting out of the soft sofas, the chairs that don't have the proper support for you are all very important. And this leads us to driving, because a lot of the cars, the seats are so poorly designed for the human body, and same thing with airplane seats. So you have to almost recreate the concept of what I'm sharing with you, whether that's providing a lumbar roll. Even though cars do often come with lumbar rolls, they're not often where your body needs it. So you have to deflate the one in the car and bring your own lumbar roll. There's lots of companies that make little rolls that you can use or supports for your back, but simply using a little scarf, or if you have extra mittens in the wintertime, or half a paper towel roll or something that you can stick back there is really supportive. Then once, especially when you're driving, once you've set your best sitting posture, adjust your rearview mirror, and that's going to be your reminder that if you don't see behind you, then you've slouched back down or you forgot to put your lumbar support in. So it's just little tips when you're driving and when you're sitting. So I hope these tips help you to make your sitting posture a little bit taller. Working on good posture is a lot of work. So often people say, can I just use a brace? Would a brace help me? And so in short term, a brace is a really good way to get a little reminder. You know, if you have whether it's a Lumo lift that's like beeping or is giving you a vibration to remind you you've just slouched, or it's a brace that becomes uncomfortable, or some taping that someone does that makes you kinesthetically aware. You go, oh, I feel that tape pulling. You know, anything that gives you that reminder, because this is your comfort zone, that you need that reminder to get out of your comfort zone. And usually I found the younger you are, the faster you can get out of your comfort zone, but it can take as long as 3 months if you've been habitually slouching, for you to go, this actually feels good now. And so if a tool helps you, remember that that tool should only be used for short periods of time, during times in which you have found yourself slouching the most, because that brace is exactly that. It's a brace, and so technically your muscles will actually get weaker if you use it and not stronger, because it's what's holding you up. It's what's keeping you in a supported position. You ideally want to lengthen muscles that are in front and strengthen muscles that are in back, and that's something we'll cover later on. But there are rules to play with braces, especially when pain is involved, but use them under guidance and use them for short term. Now, many of my clients ask me about bras, something I don't have a lot of personal experience in, and I used to worry about that, or kind of think, oh, all my sisters have big breasts and I was feeling left out. But now that I'm in my late 50s, I'm really happy that I have small breasts, and they have been a wonderful part of my life. So I don't have a lot of experience, but I have had a lot of clients with big breasts, and the extra weight of the breast does put a lot more demand on the mid-back. And that's one of the reasons that governments in Canada, our healthcare system, actually they do pay for breast reductions for some women that are very large-breasted, because it does cause chronic mid-back pain and neck pain. I'm not an advocate of a breast reduction, but certainly there is a role for that if that's a challenge that you have in your life. Otherwise, I strongly encourage you to search out the proper bra for yourself. And I have many large-breasted clients who have spent, a lot of money and a lot of time, and then when they do find that perfect bra for them, it has made such a difference in their life. So I do encourage you to go that route if that's something that you need. And the next thing that many people ask me about is their pillow. We talked one of the symptoms of forward head posture being neck pain. And so often, if you wake up in the morning or during the night and your neck pain is worse, then your pillow is definitely one of the contributing causes. So when we think about the optimum pillow or the support that we need when we're sleeping, a lot of it has to do with what position we sleep in. When we're sleeping on our back, really the only thing that needs support, if we have good alignment, is the arch in the small of our neck. If we tend to have a bit of a forward head posture, we're going to need to support that space, or else our head's going to fall back. And in the more forward your head is, the more pillow you're going to need to support. But know that if you continually support yourself when you're lying on your back, you're never going to have an opportunity to actually get a little bit of a stretch and to gradually bring yourself back. So if this was Hollywood, these pillows would be perfect. You always see two big pillows, but this is terrible for the average person to go to sleep, because it's just putting you back into that same, I'm on my iPhone, I'm on my computer, head forward posture. So your spine never gets to elongate. So if you're a back sleeper, try to minimize your pillows as much as possible so that you have the support just in the small of your neck. And as I said, you don't really need anything under your head, but if your head is not yet comfortable going all the way flat, do use the smallest pillow you can under your head and still support your neck. Pillow should not be underneath your shoulders. If you're a side sleeper, however, then you are going to want to have a pillow that allows you to fill in the space between your shoulder and your neck. So a little bit fatter pillow in this situation works, and the other pillow can be used between your knees and ankles. So now you're wanting your chin to line up in the middle of your breastbone. So I hope these tips help you have a better night's sleep and wake up pain-free. So before we are ready to stretch muscles, there are certain muscles that get particularly tight when we have a forward head posture. And one of these is called the sternal, this is our sternum, clitomastoid, the mastoid process muscle. And you'll see this muscle as I turn my head right here. And there's another branch that goes down to the clavicle, this bone over here. So how do you find this on yourself? You'll take your pulse with the opposite hand. You're going to come down, find your pulse. Then once you've found your pulse, you're going to replace your thumb and index, your index and third finger with your thumb. So the thumb goes in the place of your pulse, and you're going to push away from your pulse, so you don't ever want to massage your pulse anywhere in your body. So now I'm going to turn my head a little bit more, and that muscle is going to come right into my thumb. I'm going to go and grab the other side of the muscle with my fingers. And that gentle squeeze is all that muscle needs for a massage. If you squeeze it and it feels fine, you're going to move up the muscle. Just follow that rope-like structure all the way to near your temporal mandibular joint, your jaw here. So you're going to come all the way up, and then you're going to work your way back down. Again, staying away from the pulse, working your way down the muscle. If it feels fine, great. If there are spots that you went, whoa, that's really very uncomfortable, very somewhat painful actually sometimes, then you can't hurt the muscle by squeezing it, but do respect the fact that you want to just create an intensity of about 5 out of 10, and throughout the day, go back and squeeze it 10 times, a dozen times, and then leave it alone, and several times a day until you can get rid of all the tender spots in these muscles. So that's one key muscle for you to work on. The next one is going to be the one at the base of your skull. And that one we're going to use balls on the floor. So the little muscles at the base of the neck, the suboccipital muscles, they get very tight from being in a forward head posture. So when you try to stretch your neck like this, sometimes they just don't want to let go because they have little trigger points in them. And so using a ball that you can place just at the very base of your skull, and you can rest your hands over the ball, and then gently moving your head as though you're turning from side to side ever so slightly, or that's probably the most comfortable. For some people, a little bit of a nod. Might do it on some of the side muscles, but you just want to have enough pressure that you feel a gentle release in the muscles at the base of your neck. Once those muscles feel released, the next stretch you can do for the little suboccipital muscles is a chin tuck. And that's where you draw your chin down towards the ground. And you want to feel a lengthening in those muscles at the base of your skull. The next exercise you can do to start opening up the muscles of your chest that have been pulled forward, so to start opening up your pec minor, would be to have your hands up by your ears. And then, breath in. As you exhale, you bring your upper arms, forearms down towards the mat. Inhale back up. Exhale back. The reason I encourage people to incorporate their breath is that oftentimes if you're very tight, as you bring your arms back, your low back is going to want to take advantage of that space that it's trying to give up. So before you begin any of these postural exercises, you want to make sure that the space that's in the small of your back stays the same throughout the exercise. So for some people, placing a little rolled towel the size of your hand is really helpful, so that you know that the whole time that you do that exercise, your spine is staying in its very best alignment. If when you lie flat on your back, you find that your head is wanting to look back, then take however many towels you need, fold them under your head till you have your very best posture, still with this nice alignment, but not more towels than you need, because that's just going to put you back where your head has been for too long. So you're just trying to get that little tiny bit of a stretch while you're doing another exercise, superimposing and keeping your alignment the whole time. Another great exercise to do to start working on increasing the flexibility of the muscles that pull you forward is an arm reach. So reaching your arm behind you, lengthening. All the while that you keep your spine straight and you're reaching either with one arm or you can reach with both arms simultaneously. Again, use the support that you need under your head. So you can do it as a slide. Some people like to do it as an overhead reach. Whatever feels best for you. Anything that starts to open your body up is a great way to start increasing the mobility through your mid-back and help you to regain some of the lost range. This is called an angel wings or angel in the snow, where you're pressing your arms down as though you're creating an indentation in the snow, and you continue to slide up, keeping your chin tucked, keeping that small space in the small of your back all the same. As long as your arms stay in contact with the floor, you keep sliding up. If you lose contact, then that's as far as you go for this day, and then come back down. So these are a few examples of the postural exercises that you'll find in Exercise for Better Bones that will help you work on improving your posture.